Sometimes the hardest choices aren't about money. They're about mud on your boots and compassion in your heart. What would you do if helping someone meant getting uncomfortable? Today's story might change the way you see kindness forever. The sun was just rising over the wide golden fields of Maple Creek Farm. The sky glowed orange and pink as the morning mist slowly lifted from the ground. Birds chirped from the wooden fences, and a cool breeze carried the scent of fresh hay through the air. Farmer Thomas wiped his hands on his denim overalls and stepped out of his red barn. He was known in town as a hard-working man. Every day, before most people even poured their first cup of coffee, he was already feeding chickens, fixing fences, or checking his crops. Beside him trotted his loyal dog, Rusty, a friendly golden-brown retriever with bright eyes and endless energy. Another long day, Rusty, Farmer Thomas muttered, adjusting his straw hat. As they walked past the cornfields, something unusual broke the peaceful morning. A loud squeal echoed across the farm. It wasn't the normal, playful sound of animals waking up. This was sharp, desperate. Farmer Thomas stopped. Rusty lifted his ears and barked once. The sound came again. Sounds like trouble. The farmer sighed. He followed the noise toward the far end of his property, near an old wooden fence that bordered a patch of muddy land. Heavy rain had fallen the night before, turning the ground soft and slippery. When he reached the edge of the field, he saw it. One of his pigs, small, pink, and trembling, was stuck deep in a muddy pit. The mud reached almost to the pig's belly. Every time it tried to move, it sank even deeper. The pig squealed again. "Please, help me." It seemed to cry. Farmer Thomas frowned. He looked at the thick mud, then at his clean boots. "Pigs roll in mud all the time," he said to himself. "They like it." This one probably wandered too far. The pig struggled again, splashing mud everywhere. Rusty barked loudly and ran closer to the pit, circling it anxiously. The farmer crossed his arms. "If I go in there, I'll ruin my boots. I've got a full day of work ahead, and besides, it's just a pig. They're always dirty anyway." The pig's squeals softened into weak cries. Rusty looked up at the farmer, whining softly. For a moment, Farmer Thomas hesitated, but then he shook his head. "I don't have time for this." He turned around and walked back toward the barn. Behind him, the pig continued crying. Rusty stayed for a second longer, barking as if trying to call the farmer back. Then, slowly, with one last look at the pit, he followed his owner. All day long, Farmer Thomas worked, but something felt different. As he repaired a fence, he thought he heard faint squeals carried by the wind. As he fed the chickens, Rusty kept looking toward the far field. At lunch, the farmer sat on his porch eating a sandwich. But the food didn't taste as good as usual. Finally, Rusty ran up to him and barked sharply. "What is it now?" The farmer grumbled. Rusty tugged gently at his pant leg and ran a few steps away. Then looked back. "You want me to follow you?" Rusty barked again. With a deep sigh, Farmer Thomas stood up. All right. They walked back toward the muddy field. As they approached, the farmer's heart sank. The pig was still stuck. Now it was barely moving. Its squeals were weak, almost gone. The mud had hardened slightly around its body, trapping it even more tightly. Rusty began digging at the edge of the pit, trying to help. Farmer Thomas stood there silently. Suddenly, he imagined something different. What if it wasn't a pig? What if it were Rusty, stuck in that mud? What if it were a neighbor's child? Would he still walk away because he didn't want dirty boots? The thought made him uncomfortable. He removed his hat and wiped his forehead. "Maybe I was wrong," he whispered. Without another word, he stepped into the mud. It was cold, thick, heavy. Each step made a squelching sound as the mud swallowed his boots. He nearly slipped once, but he kept going. When he reached the pig, he knelt down despite the mess. "Easy now," he said gently. The pig's eyes widened with hope. Farmer Thomas pushed his hands under the pig's belly and pulled. The mud resisted, sucking downward like glue. Rusty barked excitedly from the edge. "Come on." The farmer grunted. With one strong, final pull, the pig came free from the mud with a loud slurp. They both fell backward into the dirt. The pig scrambled up, covered in mud, but safe. It gave a small, joyful squeal and wobbled toward dry ground. Farmer Thomas sat there, breathing heavily, completely covered in mud from head to toe. Rusty ran up and licked his face. The farmer laughed. "You were right, boy." He looked at the pig, now shaking off mud in the sunlight. At that moment, something inside him felt lighter than his clean boots ever had. Helping had cost him time. It had ruined his clothes. It had made him uncomfortable. But it had given him something far more valuable: peace. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the barn, Farmer Thomas stood by the fence, watching all his animals settle down for the night. The rescued pig lay comfortably in fresh straw. Rusty sat beside him. "You know," the farmer said softly, "sometimes we ignore someone in need because helping is inconvenient. But doing the right thing isn't supposed to be easy." Rusty wagged his tail. From that day on, Farmer Thomas never walked away from someone or something that needed help. Because he learned an important truth. The mud on your boots can always be washed away. But the regret of not helping can last forever. Moral: never ignore someone in need.